Well, welcome everybody to the Empower Half Hour, coming to you from Southwest Wyoming. I'm Bradley W. Skinner, and with me I have the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend. It's Frank Radneski.
I don't know if it's a myth, but peace and love from Southern New Jersey. Welcome, everybody.
We're glad to have you guys with us.
Last week. We really missed having you guys, and I'm sure to a certain extent you missed having us as well.
Yeah, Darren will not be with us tonight, as being the busy man that he is taking care of business back home, so he won't be joining us today. But that's all right. We've got Frank. We've got his magic tricks and his magical personality, so we are good to go. Frank, how are things going out there, man?
It's been a beautiful week. However, we're getting frost warning this evening. You guys must be getting snow.
No, we're the opposite. Apparently, it's moved all that way. It's a nice, beautiful day today. So we're apparently just trading weather here at the moment.
Yeah. One thing in New Jersey is they now have walk-up vaccines for all those months where educators couldn't get vaccinated fast enough, and it was spreading everywhere. Schools couldn't open, and now, hey, they have too many vaccines and not enough people to vaccinate.
Wow.
Go figure.
Well, that's a unique problem to have, I guess.
Huh. I guess. So if you're having trouble getting vaccinated, I'll pick you up at the airport.
Wonderful. I just need to come out and visit anyway. So.
Yes, sir, you do.
Someday. Well, those of you that are tuning in, we sure appreciate having you here, and we are so excited. I'm super excited. I know we each, as we bring guests in, we're always reaching out, and we're finding and we're looking for and taking opportunities to bring in guests that we think that really have something valuable to add to the show, have some great content, and also, more importantly, they're just great people. Our guest today, I was fortunate to meet a couple of years ago, and being a fellow theater director, we've had a lot in common. We've been able to share a lot of ideas. We also had an opportunity recently, just 2 years ago. We traveled to Washington, D.C., and were able to go to Capitol Hill and speak on the importance of arts in schools. And it's just as wonderful. And also, being a guy who really likes food, this guest is an excellent individual at choosing the right place to go when it comes to finding something to eat. And we'll talk about that a little more. But please, ladies and gentlemen, welcome, coming to us from Greensboro, North Carolina, here is Chris Veneris. Chris, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, man.
Nice
thank you. So yes, of course, as I mentioned in the introduction, Chris, a theater director as well. He is also an arts advocate, and even more importantly, he is a human rights activist as well, in making sure that people are heard, that they're seen, that they're loved. And Chris is just an amazing person. Thank you so much for being our guest on the show today. It's wonderful to see you, man.
Thanks for asking me. I'm really excited to be here.
Good.
You know what? Just from the introduction, and we were talking briefly before the show, but a lot of people talk, and then there are people that walk their talk. And wow, thanks for doing that, and thanks for being an advocate, not only for education, but for us, for civil rights, for people. So I'm on the edge of my seat if I had a seat, Chris. So let's go.
Yeah, let's do this.
Perfect. So, Chris, we're going to just jump right in. Being a theater director, being at a school in the South, and being able to work with students of all different walks of life, socioeconomic, as well as students of color. What does that mean for you as a theater director, and making sure that all of your students are represented and have a place on stage? Let's just start right there and dive in.
Well, I think early on for me, I was working with the school I'm at now. I've been there 13 years. When I first got there, it was mostly white school, and slowly over the years, it has changed. I think I was telling you before we came on, when I first got there, it was like 75% white, now down to about 52% white. And the classes I'm teaching now are actually majority minority students. The minorities are the majority in my classes now. As far as really working with the students, at the beginning, I think I did things the wrong way. I was like, hey, kumbaya, everybody come together. And I was picking a lot of shows that didn't speak to minority populations. They didn't. I was really good about picking shows that spoke to my LGBTQ AI plus population, but not to the racial minorities we had in the school. And unfortunately, due to COVID, I have students that we missed out. We had actually picked almost a complete season prior to the pandemic of shows that would highlight minorities. We were going to do Raisin in the Sun. We were going to do She Kills Monsters. We were looking at musicals. We hadn't picked a musical yet, but we were looking at musicals that had strong leads for the BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color population that's at my school. And unfortunately, just things kind of fell to the wayside. It doesn't mean we won't pick them back up. The biggest thing is just finding playwrights that speak to our students of color, finding things that really reach out to them, because I think it's on my Facebook background. I understand that I will never understand, but yet I stand. And that's kind of been my motto probably for the last 2 years, is that I'm never going to understand what it's like to be a Black man, Black woman. I'm never going to understand what it's like to be a Latinx person. It's just not who I am. So I have to let them tell their truths. And that really became the kind of goal, is just listening to these students tell me what they went through and really trying to watch what was going on in the halls. I had a great student who was, by everybody else, considered a troublemaker, was constantly kicked out of class, just became one of those kids that roamed the hall. And I started talking to him one day, and like really talking to him, not just in my class, but really talking to him and trying to ask him, like, what's going on? You always want to get out and just walk. You don't want to be in class. He was like, that's just because teachers let me do that because they think I'm going to be a bother. So they say, oh, you need to go to the bathroom? Okay, go. And they let him go. And that became one of those things where we never clicked 100%. There were times, probably just as many as we got along as we didn't. He had problems with me. And one of the things that finally clicked in our relationship as a teacher-student was that I realized that whenever I got frustrated with him, my voice would deepen. It would get, I wouldn't scream, I wouldn't yell, but it would get that kind of deeper, kind of, gravelly. I'm a loud person anyway. Part of my growing up, my background, I've always been really loud, boisterous, did outdoor theater. And I realized, talking to another one of my Black students, that was it. That was that idea of just raising my voice to that kid. And they are kids. And that's the thing I think so many people miss, is that they are kids. I don't care that they may be taller than I am and look like they're in their 20s or 30s. They're still only 15, 16, 17 years old, maybe 18. But 18 still, I mean, at my age now, 18 is still a kid to me. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it was just talking to them. And then that kind of clicked with me as, okay, let's change about how I'm teaching. Because that's on me as an educator. It's not on the kids. It's not the kids' deal. It's all on me as an educator if I'm talking in a way that they can't react to any other way but being defensive and posturing.
You know what? Yeah, a couple of things that you said, and I'm going to throw out some sarcasm there. A novel approach to education. If you want to know what a student wants or needs, ask them. Wow, that. It happens, doesn't it? Another thing I picked up on was implicit bias isn't just about race. It is about race, but it's not just about race. It could be about that kid who has that reputation before you have him in your class or in your office. And then it's, yeah, can't wait until you get Joey. Well, you know what? I'm going to go find Joey before Joey finds me, because I think he's a cool kid just by what I'm listening to and hearing. And the whole world changes, doesn't it, for them?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. It completely changes how they respond to you. And then that became more of, I also run the diversity club at my school, which used to be what other schools call GSA, Gay Straight Alliances, which is now changing names to be more inclusive and be more equitable to the entire LGBTQ group. But we wanted to make it diversity club so that we didn't just talk to the gay, straight, bisexual, transgender students. We wanted to be there for all of our students. And that's kind of been one of the things that I've missed most about the pandemic, and not being allowed to have clubs and groups get together. I mean, we're in the South, so sports are, of course, still meeting, but no other club or group can get together. And that's one of the things that I'm really looking forward to, hopefully next year, and hopefully being able to do some of those after school activities and really get those kids in and try to meet their needs as best as I can.
Great. So this next question I have, and Frank, this will be from an educational leadership standpoint. I want you to chime in on this as well. So when we're seeing, and being theater directors, so obviously we're in tune with what's happening in the theater world around the country. This year, for those schools that are in person and have been able to keep their programs performing, we've heard of a lot of schools around the country that have actually had school leadership shut down productions of certain plays and musicals because of the racial content within those shows. Chris, what do you have to say about those examples that we've seen this? Is that a missed opportunity? Are they doing the right thing, or is it just a major mistake?
Simplest way I can put it, and if this hurts somebody's feelings, that's not, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but maybe it needs to be hurt. It's stupid. It's stupid to shut these down. Plain and simple. Before we came on, we were just kind of talking about Hairspray. The whole idea about Hairspray is to show and to teach us about what is actually happening, what happened at those times. I mean, it was written as a piece of flipping the camera and really seeing what was going on in the world, in the South, but not just the South. I mean, I think there's this great misnomer that racism only lives in the South and that it's the big thing. No, I think the South just is more willing to show its racism. But shows like that, a show I directed one time, I directed it a couple of times, but one time I directed Laramie Project. And we ended up with 10 people in the audience. My principal came to me the day we opened and asked, could we shut it down? Because the only thing he had read about it was all these people protesting, and it was mainly churches protesting, and a lot of it came from why is it escaping me in my old age? I don't want to even give them press, but the church that's in Kansas, that's a church. I use that term very loosely. That goes around and just boycotts and protests everything. But the whole idea is he thought it was going to be a big protest. And there were some people in the community. They didn't show up at the school to protest it or anything, but because of the subject matter and all, they wanted to go after that show. But any of these shows shouldn't be, as someone who works in a school, you have to know your community. So if you know your community is going to react a certain way, clear it with administration. But the second and probably the bigger thing is maybe those are the places that also need those shows. I I try to push the envelope on shows and what I can get away with, just because it's needed. We need these areas to see things through a different lens. I know so much in politics has been about don't live in an echo chamber, don't live in an echo chamber. And I know for some of my social media, I've created an echo chamber, because certain parts of mine, like my Facebook, is pretty much a echo chamber for the most part, because that's kind of my fun, relaxing place. Whereas like other social media accounts are open and full of political diversity and ideas. But back to your question, it's all about showing these people that they need to have an idea of what else is out there, not just what they've seen. Because at least in my area, a lot of the people that are there have lived there their entire lives. They went to that school. It's their kids' school now. So, yeah.
Yeah, when I hear of a school district that's, shutting down to kill a mockingbird, all I can think is you are missing the entire point of To Kill a Mockingbird. What are you doing? It's so frustrating.
Right.
Frank, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think a component of, if you're having a play, when I was principal in a middle school, if we were having a play, if we were reading a book even, you had to communicate. This is what we're reading. It's been approved by the National Middle School Library Association. That's not the exact title, but something like that. And this is what's going on. We literally had a book one time the 8th graders were reading. A lady sent me an email. The F-bomb is in there 27 times, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which that's why we sent out ahead of time to the 8th grade parents that this is the book we're reading. It's approved by the Library Association, et cetera. And it is a little edgy, but it's also realistic of the time, which was the Vietnam War, soldiers fighting, et cetera, et cetera. And, but the complaint always comes after the fact. And, we were, we took it to the Board of Education. Ultimately, they don't run the day-to-day operations, but they do have final approval on certain things. And, the book stayed. And, but it wasn't like it was a staple. Every year we used a different book, which is why shouldn't we? The classics along with some contemporary. The same things with the school plays, et cetera. Look, we're doing Wizard of Oz Jr., and this is the story, et cetera, et cetera. And once you communicate that ahead of time, then, hey, this is what it is, but we're doing it, et cetera. And that's what we did. And a lot of times it does provide the education for those people that do live in a bubble. And, as Chris was saying, earlier, in the beginning, it was 75% white students, but then the demographics change, which is not unlike many schools across the country. But you still need that education. You still need, hey, Black history is history. I was watching a movie the other day, Frankie and Johnny. You want to talk about non-representation? I have a daughter named Frankie, and there's a star in the movie who's a female, and she's Frankie, et cetera. That's why we were watching it. But, there was no representation. It was an Elvis movie. It was still fun, but they could have done a better job casting, et cetera. And
so that brings up a good point with the leadership. Yeah, I think, for me, I know as a director, one of the most helpful things when it comes to the productions, especially if I'm doing something that is a little bit more edgy, or is at least is possibly going to be making people in my community uncomfortable because of the content, then I'm making sure that the first person I want behind me is my principal. I want him knowing the content of the show, agreeing that it is the right show for us to do. So when he does get those individuals that are complaining about it, that he's not going to be siding with the community that may have a few complaints. He's going to say, look, I've read this show. I know what's going on with it. It is the right production for our kids right now. And it may not have been the right show a year ago. It may not be the right show next year, but it's right for right now. And we're going to do that. And having that support definitely helps. But it seems like a lot of times as I know Chris and I have talked before, that those channels have been used. They are making the right choices. And then it's then after some pushback from the community that then people are folding and changing their minds and saying, no, shut that show down.
Right, right.
And it's in those times that you have to try to push back. And I know it's tough when you're trying to figure out, do I push back and allow the possibility of me possibly losing my job, or do I not? But ultimately, if you don't stand up, and I know it's tough, and I've had those times where I've really not wanted to, and then been like, if you don't stand up for what you believe in and what you think is right now, it makes it that much easier to be canceled and shut down the next time. It makes it that much easier for them to say that the dominant political ideal of your area is true throughout. I mean, it becomes a really harsh look at reality when you don't know what you can and cannot say. And if you don't do these shows, if you don't read these books, I'll never forget in high school, I had a principal, we were reading in my senior English class, Kurt Vonnegut, turned me on, Slaughterhouse-Five.
Yeah.
Turned me on to Kurt Vonnegut. I was never a big reader. I'm dyslexic. I'm ADHD. Have all the fun learning differences, and it was really hard for me to read. But that English teacher picked this book. She was a brand new English teacher, and principal came up to me and asked me what I thought of the book. I'm not sure why he asked me, but he asked me, caught me, and just kind of asked, and I said, "Is it a book we should be taken down?" I said, "What happens when you start banning books? I mean, really, what happens when you start banning pieces of literature, pieces of art? It's what's next, the next step." I mean, and I know this is me really kind of maybe stretching it, but maybe not. When you start banning stuff, start shutting stuff down, the next step is then you just start burning it. You start getting rid of it. You start destroying it. It's not art. If art makes you feel comfortable, you're not looking at the right type of art. Art is meant to disrupt. It's meant to make you think. And it's one thing I tell all my students. I said, I don't want you heretics. Nice. Nice. Yep. It's everything. Like, people need to understand that if you're always comfortable, then things really aren't going to change. Take our current climate of everything. We have to be the ones to change it with the books, with art, with whatever we can do to support. Had a talk with a friend of mine, and I always was like, yeah, we need to back our Black brothers and sisters in this fight and all. But ultimately, it comes as a white male, it's me that has to put in the work to dismantle the system, because it is people like me for hundreds and hundreds of years that set up the system to benefit me. I mean, systemic racism isn't going to get torn down. Black people have been trying to tear it down, but we, and I mean, not me and y'all, but we as a kind of a collective of white people, as long as we're feel comfortable and there's more people feeling comfortable and not wanting to take that head on, then it's never going to change. And by putting this, I'm circling back to the art, the books and everything, by using literature, using theater, using music, this is a way for us to tear down these walls and to slowly dismantle this system that for hundreds and hundreds of years has been working only in the favor of really white men. I mean, I think I just read this morning or heard I think it may have been on NPR this morning talking about suffrage and how quickly the white women sold out the black women that were standing with them to make sure they got the right to vote. And they were willing to move forward with just the white women getting the right to vote. So it really does become a way of us using our art, our voices to help dismantle, while also remembering we need to listen to the people that have been hurt the most by all of this.
Absolutely. That's a great point. Thank you so much for bringing that up. This now brings us time for our final thoughts. And I'll go ahead and start with that, I believe. Well, let's see who it picked. Oh, hey, it does pick me. So really quick in wrapping things up. First, Chris, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being our guest. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for everything that you do. My final thoughts as I'm talking about art and stuff. And as we mentioned before, sometimes as a director, it's easy to make safe choices. It's easy to pick those shows. You can always do Disney and High School Musical and Beauty and the Beast, and you're going to bring people into your theater and they're going to love the shows. But when you look at your students, and you really have to ask sometimes, what are they benefiting from it? What are they really getting? What are they learning? And making sure that at least more often I'm taking opportunities to pick shows that are either going to do a better job of representing some of my students or possibly challenging the thinking of some of my other students. That's of value to me. I'm here as an educator. I need to educate all of my students. And sometimes those are tough choices. And there are going to be people in the community that may not like the choices of shows that I do because of the representation that's allowing for some of my minority students, or because it's addressing and trying to create safe spaces for those that may have different viewpoints and those of my LGBTQ students that want to be able to participate and show and tell their stories. And even though those are tough decisions, what I've realized, and this is a tough thing that I've had to do as a director, is am I willing to lose a few audience members? Yeah. But what I'm not willing to lose is the respect of my students. So those are my last thoughts for you. All righty. Frank.
When you push yourself to the end of your comfort zone, sometimes that's where you see your full potential. And I'm not talking about anxiety type of things, which a lot of people have been dealing with, especially over the last year and a half almost. But when you give your students a voice, and Chris mentioned it earlier, hey, ask a student, did you ever see this movie or this play? Yes, I did, and blah, 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 blah. And you could still communicate that to the parents and the community. And that's where sometimes that bridge isn't gapped, is that we lose something. And if you're doing a play or reading a book or doing a culture fair or a STEAM career fair, etc., you can still have everyone represented. Ask, and you shall receive. I mean, I remember I was at a school that had that didn't have a lot of diversity, as Chris mentioned earlier. But when sometimes we needed to take the kids and go to a school that had diversity and let the kids talk to each other. And you know what they found out? They have a lot of things different about themselves, but they also have a lot of things alike about them, about each other. And thank you, Chris. Appreciate you. Peace and love. Always win.
Thank you for having me on, Brad, Frank. I really appreciate being able to be on this and just talk and just speak my truth, because that's what it's all about, is speaking our truth and living our truth. And my final thought is just love each other and take care of each other and listen. Listen more than you speak. I know it's an old cliche, but you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen twice as much as you talk. And the biggest thing, don't listen to respond, listen to hear and understand. And make sure that you keep art alive. Art helps these students, whether it's music, theater, visual art, dance, creative writing. These things help our students explore who they are as people, and they help us as humans be better. Thank you again, everybody. Thank you for watching.
Thanks everyone for tuning in for the Empower Half Hour, the fastest half hour of your week. We'll see you next time.
See you next week. Thank you.